As you know, I have been critical of JD Vance in the past. I like a lot of things about JD Vance, but I also find his connections to Palantir and Peter Thiel troublesome. I also don't love his economic policy. I think some of that is kind of socialistic. In any case, he taught an absolute masterclass this week in defending Trump's agenda, and it was actually really good. He was very America first, which is fantastic. He was at a Turning Point USA event this week. I want to show you all the highlights. I think we've got about 5 or 6 clips of the best moments so that you don't have to parse through the whole thing like we did. And I want to start with when he was questioned about Thomas Massie. Right now, there's a bit of a feud between Thomas Massie and Donald Trump. Trump has gone as far as to say that he's going to primary Massie as well. There's a couple people who are up for that. And JD Vance was asked about it. Here is what he said.
Independent, having your own opinions is one thing. Voting against the party on every single issue, you're eventually going to make too many enemies. And that is the problem that Thomas has had. It's not one issue. It's not 3 or 4 issues. It's that every time that we've needed Thomas for a vote, he has been completely unwilling to provide it. That is why the President of the United States has trained his ire on Thomas Massie. It's because we can never count on him for some of the most difficult votes. I wish that that weren't the case. I say that as somebody who's known Thomas well before I got into politics, but politics is politics, and when you always vote against the party, you can't expect the party to actually back you.
Perfect answer. And my question for Thomas Massie is, why would you even caucus with Republicans if you're never going to vote for them? Like, just go start your own party and do your own thing. And I think that many Thomas Massie fans, what they don't understand is that we don't actually disagree with Massie's principles and his policy. I've got no problem. I love, actually, that Thomas Massie does not take money from interest groups. That's fantastic. I love that he is very anti-national debt and trying to be fiscally responsible. All of that's fantastic. I actually don't care. Thomas Massie as a person's fine. But so far, he has only played oppositional politics, and that's a problem, meaning he just opposes everything and never really offers any feasible alternatives. And I think that frustrates someone like JD Vance and Donald Trump, who actually cobble together these coalitions. The hard part of governing is not having good opinions. Anyone can do that. Most Americans, frankly, have a pretty good hold on politics and have some pretty good opinions like let's deport all the illegal immigrants and let's be free market. Basic stuff. It's not that hard. But what makes a politician actually effective, like JD Vance or Donald Trump, is again cobbling together coalitions that will do something that people want. And that's very difficult. And Thomas Massie has not shown any ability to do that whatsoever, even though his principles are pretty solid. He'd be much better off, in my opinion, to do what I do and just share his opinions outside of elected politics and exert his political pressure that way. I think Thomas Massie, I've seen him speak on the national debt, for example, very persuasive. Everything he says is fantastic. I think he would have more influence, ironically, outside of politics and in broadcasting or opinion than he does in politics. I think that's where he should go. He clearly is not cut out for politics because he has no idea how to cobble together coalitions, as I said. Now, the questions continued with a subject that I care a lot about, JD Vance's connections to Palantir. It's one of the biggest questions I would have for him if I met him. So to his credit, he did answer it head on. Here it is.
I have a question. Do you condone large private corporations such as Palantir hoarding data caches on U.S. citizens?
No, I don't condone it. And here's the thing. So I get asked about Palantir a lot because there's this internet meme out there that somehow I am super in bed with Palantir. And here's the thing that I'd say about this. Palantir is a private company. They sometimes do a useful service, and sometimes they're going to do things that we don't like. You should be demanding that your representatives do 2 things when it comes to Palantir or when it comes to any other technology company. Number 1, protecting your data. What's going on with artificial intelligence is going to mean that there are massive inducements to steal your data, to harvest it, and to use it against you to sell digital advertisements. That is not what I believe in, and I've been fighting against it, whether it's Palantir or any other technology company, literally before I ran for office. When I ran for office, I was criticized by Republicans in my Republican Senate primary because I was talking then about Google and Facebook harvesting our data. It's unacceptable. I don't care who does it. I don't want them to do it. Number 2, and this is also very important, what's going on with artificial intelligence, we got to be worried about large-scale surveillance, okay? Everything, when you asked about Palantir, do you know that every time You make a credit card transaction, the credit card companies are collecting data on how you spend your money. Do you know that every time you linger over a link on the internet for more than a half second, the search engines are collecting data on you so that they can sell you advertisements? One of the biggest questions for American policy over the next 10 years is how to ensure that you are a sovereign citizen. And you cannot be a sovereign citizen if any private corporation or any government can steal something from you that belongs to you.
So I personally think that this is the number one issue that could take JD Vance down in a run for the presidency. Make no mistake, he's already won the nomination at this point for the Republican Party. JD Vance will be the Republican nominee. It's not even close. Polymarket has him at like 60%. And if you look at the polls, he's up in the 40s and 50s, which, you might see that and be like, oh, well, there's a long way to go. Donald Trump didn't even have polling as good as JD Vance at this point in the last election cycle. JD Vance is looking very good. The closest person to him is Donald Trump Jr., and Donald Trump Jr. and JD Vance have such a close relationship, there's no way they would run against each other. So you can add Donald Trump Jr.'s numbers on to JD Vance. Maybe he would run as his VP. It's always possible. I don't think he should. But the next step is Marco Rubio and Ron DeSantis at like 6%. It's nowhere close. JD Vance will be the Republican nominee. That does not mean, though, that he will beat the Democrat one. I know we like to say that Democrats are just going to lose every time. Democrats could actually put in a good nominee. They probably won't, but they might. I think he is going to beat the Democrat. I think JD Vance will be our next president. If you had to ask me right now, I do think that's going to be the case. But he needs to distance himself from Peter Thiel greatly, because this is going to come out when he's campaigning. He needs to come up with a better way to describe the deal that he brokered between the U.S. military and Palantir. Again, Peter Thiel is the guy who funded his whole campaign for Senate. He's the one who made JD Vance relevant in politics. He's got a lot over JD. That's my biggest concern, is the pressure, the leverage that this random tech billionaire has over JD Vance. I don't love that. Next up, students asked JD Vance about the issue of our day, apparently, of course, Israel. Here's what he said.
Ethnic cleansing in Gaza. I'm just confused why this idea has come around, considering the fact that not only does their religion not agree with ours, but also openly supports the prosecution of ours.
Yeah, so let's say a few things about this. First of all, when the President of the United States says America first, that means that he pursues the interests of Americans first. That is our entire foreign policy. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to have alliances, that you're not going to work with other countries from time to time. And that is what the president believes, is that Israel, sometimes they have similar interests to the United States and we're going to work with them in that case. Sometimes they don't have similar interests to the United States. And this example, the most recent Gaza peace plan that all of us have been working on very hard for the past few weeks, the president of the United States could only get that peace deal done by actually being willing to apply leverage to the state of Israel. So when people say that Israel is somehow manipulating or controlling the president of the United States, they're not controlling this president of the United States, which is one of the reasons why we'd be able to have some of the success that we've had in the Middle East.
And that position is the mainstream position that Americans support. It's likely to piss off maybe the 10% most radical on either side, because they're basically the same at this point. People on the far right and the far left believe the same things about Israel, which is hilarious to me. But everyone in between is going to feel very good about that in some sort of a race. Anytime you point to JD Vance and say, what do you think about Israel? 90% of people are going to look at that and find it palatable because it's logical. It's, the alternative to that is this foreign policy chaos that we saw under the Biden administration. And nobody wants that. Everyone loves, really, if you look at his approval rating, Donald Trump and JD Vance, what people really love is immigration and foreign policy under them. So I don't know why they wouldn't continue that. Now, with as moderate as his position of Israel was, JD Vance took a hard stance on immigration, like a really hard stance, and I thought it was really good. Again, a wise move. The whole Q&A I was watching to see how good of a campaigner JD Vance would be. Would he get the right issues, right? Would he be moderate when he needed to be? And would he take a hard stance when he needed to be? And he's doing very well so far. He took a hard stance on immigration, as he should. Here it is.
When you talk about too many immigrants here, when did you guys decide that number? Why did you sell us a dream You made us spend our youth, our wealth in this country and gave us a dream. You don't owe us anything. We have worked hard for it. Then how can you, as a vice president, stand there and say that we have too many of them now and we are going to take them out to people who are here rightfully so by paying the money that you guys asked us? You gave us the path, and now how can you stop it and tell us we don't belong here anymore?
I can believe that the United States should lower its levels of immigration in the future while also respecting that there are people who have come here through lawful immigration pathways that have contributed to the country. But just because one person or 10 people or 100 people came in legally and contributed to the United States of America, does that mean that we're thereby committed to let in 1 million or 10 million or 100 million people a year in the future? No, that's not right. We cannot have, I'll go and finish, we cannot have an immigration policy where what was good for the country 50 or 60 years ago binds the country inevitably for the future. There's too many people who want to come to the United States of America, and my job as vice president is not to look out for the interests of the whole world, it's to look out for the people of the United States.
That is a winning message for 2028. Now, finally, probably his least popular position of the night, unfortunately, because I think it should be the most popular, but I don't think it is. Regardless of popularity, it's his best. He stood up there, proclaimed that the United States is a Christian nation.
Christian values out there that I think that we've just sort of assumed and we've in fact taken for granted. Christian values are the idea that you should respect every single person as an individual, whatever the color of their skin, created in the image of God. That's a Christian concept. And in fact, it was a Christian empire, Great Britain, that abolished slavery to begin with. The idea that we should eliminate child sacrifice. What did the Christian settlers find when they came to the New World? They found a lot of civilizations that were murdering babies in weird religious rituals. It was Christianity that said we don't kill children just because they're somehow inconvenient to people. A lot of the things, human rights, the very idea that human beings have rights are a Christian concept. And so I'd ask you, my assumption based on the question is that you're skeptical of Christianity, or at least of certain public professions of Christianity. One of my favorite Bible verses is, "By your fruits ye shall know them." And I think that the fruits of the Christian faith are the most moral, the most just, and the most prosperous civilization in history. I make no apologies for believing that Christianity is the pathway to God. I make no apologies for thinking that Christian values are an important foundation of this country, but I'm not going to force you to believe in anything, because that's not what God wants, and that's not what I want either.
The bottom line for this Q&A is this made me like JD Vance more. I still have questions, and I hope he'll be scrutinized during his campaign, because when you're scrutinized, that's how you come out better on the other end. And if JD Vance is going to be our next president for 4 or even 8 years, I want him to be scrutinized well, and I want him to shed off some of those ancillary relationships and weirdness that he had in his past. I like his chances right now against Democrats. If he can get up there and get asked difficult questions from our side, then I think that he's going to be able to do the same on the other side and have pretty good answers. The progressive left is a cult. I talk all about it in my book, A New Cult. You've heard about it. I talk about it pretty much every single episode at this point. So why have you not bought it, guys? Also, we've got Christmas coming around already. Yes, Christmas. Go buy it right now for a loved one. Fantastic gift. Again, the link is in the description below. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. Please like the video so other great patriots like yourselves will see it. And if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, give the podcast a rating so people will find it there. And you can tune in every single weekday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show, or you can watch another video right here.